Welcome to Uncomplicating Business, friends. I am Sarah Torpy. I am happy to be here with you today. Today, we are going to talk about planning. And specifically, we're going to talk about what I think of as one of the trickiest parts of planning because there are different varieties of planning. I think I know one of the places that lots of people get stuck is in doing too much of one kind of planning and not enough of another. So, what does that mean? In my head, there are two kinds of plannings that I think about when I talk to clients, when I help them plan out their businesses, when I make my own plans. I think about what in my head I call passive planning, but not in a derogatory way. So it's the passive is just it's thinking planning. And then there's active planning, which is like the actual planning of the actions. Both of them are required, but often we spend way more time on one than the other, and that's part of what gets in our way. So that's what we're going to talk about today. First, let me define a couple of things. Passive planning, again, not derogatory. So this is not me saying if you're passive planning, you're doing it wrong. Passive planning is where you sit and think, honestly. You're passive planning all the time. It's where you lay out the options and the ideas and the processes you want to follow. It's the actual thinking, the like, okay, here's the options. Here's the ways I could do this. Here's the thing I want to accomplish, right? It's this laying it all out on paper. Active planning is the planning of the action part of that, right? It's the when you touch your calendar, you are in active planning mode. When you agree to meet with somebody about something, when you look at your calendar and you move this meeting and you add that one, all of those kinds of things. When you look at your time for the week and think like, okay, I'm going to accomplish these things on that day and this thing on this day, and I'm not going to do any of those things on Friday, whatever. All of those things are the active part of planning, the actual putting into place. The thing that connects those two together, the bridge between passive planning and active planning, is decisions. So, for example, if you're thinking about a goal, like one of my goals right now, or better yet, let me use a client. I have a client right now that one of her goals for the last couple of months has been many of her clients work for our sort of sub entities of a larger entity. And she has been really thinking about how to gain clients outside of that larger entity. And so we have been really thinking about what that process looks like. And every week she's planning the actions she takes towards reaching out to people that are not in that larger company. And in the last 2 weeks, she's gotten the first client outside of that company. And because the thought planning followed by the calendar and action planning led her to actually gaining that work. So what happened in the process is she went from the thought planning to deciding which actions are the ones she was actually going to take. For her, it has been a combination of networking, asking for connection, and reaching out to people who have left that larger company and gone other places and really making sure they know about what she does and are connecting to her in new ways. And then making the decision again about where those things fit in her day, how much of them she's going to do, and how to prioritize them. One of the things she's done in this calendar year is really prioritize making sure she's treating her business like a client and giving herself a half hour or so most days at the start of her day to work on business growth tasks for just her business rather than work for her clients. So she put her business growth tasks at the front of the day. This is passive planning and active planning combined into result, right? So for you, one of the questions to ask yourself is first like, okay, what are the ways that I am doing passive planning? Like where am I taking the thinking space? And actually getting the passive planning time is an active thing. Like you might have to put it in your calendar. Where am I getting that thinking time? And then the question that follows that is how am I translating my thinking into action? This is something that I, as a business coach, do with clients and members of the Uncomplicating Business Lab all the time, where they'll say, okay, I decided here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I need to do. Or they'll be like, here's this thing. I just talked to a client today. She's working on hiring someone to do a small job for her business, like a project-based thing. And we've been talking about it for weeks. And she said to me today, I haven't posted that yet. And I was like, okay, cool. What's the plan for posting it? And she was like, well, I said, what do you actually need? Because sometimes it's like, do you have what you need? She was like, well, I already have the written words, whatever. I know where I want to put it. Okay, great. And she was like, I just have to do it. And so I said to her, okay, let's do it right now. And then she told me she hated me, even though she loves me and I love her. And we did it. And within the next 10 minutes, she had somebody applying, which was kind of amazing. So for me, a lot of times what I see in people is you have the thinking and you might even have the decision, but you haven't done the planning for when you take the action, right? You know you're going to take the action, but you haven't like activated it in your planning to give it space and weight and time. And it could be that you're like, cool, I put things on my calendar and then I ignore them. That is a separate kind of issue, right? Because if you're doing the passive planning, you're doing the thinking, and then you're doing the active planning, okay, this is going in my calendar and I have time at these spaces. That's how I'm going to do it. The next question, and then you're saying, okay, I don't get them done in those blocks. The questions I have are about like the size of the task. Is the task the wrong size or the wrong task? Is the action synced up with the goal? Then the other part is, like the client said to me this morning, she was like, what's really in the way is that I don't think anybody's going to want this job. She didn't share it because she was saying no for people. And I was like, okay, listen, I promise there are people that want this work. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean they won't. And immediately she got a response. So that was a mindset. She was having a thought, like a grounding issue around the action she was going to take that was impeding the action. So if you are putting it in the calendar and you're doing the active planning pieces and they're still not happening, it's like, okay, is this a size of task problem? Is this the kind of task problem? Is it not synced up somewhere? Or is it just not a task I want to do? Like I don't post to Instagram on my calendar because I don't like to. I do it occasionally when I remember, and then it feels like a win because I did it. The other thing though is like, okay, what's in the way here? It's one of my very favorite questions to ask people and myself. It's like, okay, if I'm not doing this, why? What's the problem? What's in the way? In asking myself, it's not like what's wrong with me, very purposefully. It's what's in the way here. And when I asked that to my client this morning, she was like, well, I just don't think anybody wants this job. Well, okay, that's in the way here because if you think nobody's going to respond, why bother? But you don't have the evidence that nobody's going to respond. That's just like your doubt creeping in. So for you, the tasks here today are, where are you getting your passive planning space? What are the decisions you're making? How are you translating those into active plans? And if they get stuck, what gets stuck? This is work that I do all the time with clients and in the Uncomplicating Business Lab. The most efficient way for you to get support with this is to come to coaching in the lab. The lab is $250 a month for a year, or it's $2,500 for the year. And you get a whole year of support with this kind of stuff. We talk about planning every week. We talk about goal setting and action planning at the start of the month. We evaluate and reset it at the end of the month. We talk about it in between, and then we do it again. Because these are the habits, this passive planning and action planning, that allow us to create ongoing, consistent, simple, uncomplicated, confident progress that translates into money. Because here's the thing, the task my client needed someone to do that she's now getting people to say yes to today to apply for that job is one that is going to make her business money. It's probably going to make her business thousands of dollars because it's a marketing task that just isn't getting done. And so she's going to pay a little bit to gain a lot that she wasn't making when that task wasn't happening. So for you, there's a higher cost to the task not happening, to being in the way of it, to having it be impeded through either not following passive to active planning or having something in the way of it that you're just not getting around. It's costing you the money that's not being made when the plans don't go into effect. So if you want support with that, that's what we do in the lab. If you have questions about active and passive planning and decision making, please ask. I'd love to talk to you about them. And I will see you back here in 2 weeks. I have another really amazing guest coming to talk about sales, and I can't wait to see you then. If you get a chance, I would love for you to do me a quick favor and rate and review this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to it, because this is how other people help to find it. If you're not subscribing, now's a great time. I'll talk to you soon. Have a great week.